appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
The President of the United States is dead.
Considering the number of enemies that he had, Lord knows they had reasons to get rid of him.
And I know that her face is down like this. She pushed him down and crawled out over the back to get a piece of skull off the back of the car.
Turned out that he left his tape recorder going when he left the room.
That bullet then traversed and moved backward. And then you do have the shot from the rear that struck him in the back, and I think there was another shot that hit him in the back of the head.
It didn't make any sense why one guy who suddenly went from having fired a rifle since the Marine Corps and suddenly was able to pull off world-class precision.
Was there a real thread of that fear running through the administration that perhaps a coup could take place?
He and Kenny O'Donnell were told they had to change their stories for the good of the country. He had to basically lie about what he saw.
Showtime. Welcome to the show, folks. Get the coffee going, get the tea going, get a beverage of choice going, get in your most comfy chair, kick your feet back. We got a wonderful show for you tonight. Alcatraz, the Rock, as it's infamously known, is a ghostly island and sits ominously in the middle of San Francisco Bay. It was a maximum security prison designed to hold only the most dangerous criminals. Now, according to Native American mythology, evil spirits are said to inhabit the island. It's also reputed to be in the top 5 haunted spots in California. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I was there for 8 hours straight filming. There's a vibe to it. I don't know how else to explain it. There's a certain vibe. I don't know. Maybe it's the salt air. Who knows? But there's something there. Here's a brief list of just some of the criminals it has. Now, before I list them, they all have 2 things in common. They are all legends, and they all have Hollywood feature films made about their escapades in crime. Al Capone, Mickey Cohen, George Machine Gun Kelly, convicted murderer Robert Stroud, who would later become known as the Birdman of Alcatraz, made into a feature film. Now, our story tonight was also made into a feature film starring Clint Eastwood called Escape from Alcatraz. And that's exactly where we're going to go tonight. Our guest tonight is Ken Widner. And Ken has a book titled Alcatraz, The Last Escape. Now, what's different about tonight's guest is Ken has a unique insight and direct link to 2 of the escapees from Alcatraz. He is the nephew of escapees John and Clarence Anglin. Now, despite authorities claiming no one had ever escaped alive, that bold statement seems to be not true. As we will find out tonight, his uncles not only survived, but thrived. The story tonight, folks, is nothing short of riveting. Welcome to the show, Ken. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I have been fascinated. I saw the movie years ago, of course.
Right.
Now, just for the folks that are not familiar with the story, can you give a very brief synopsis as best you can to keep it brief? Because that's not the story I want to get across tonight. I want to get across your involvement with this story and the revelations that came to you.
Well, so, of course, John and Clarence Anglin are my uncles. And, the short story is they robbed a bank in 1958. They wind up being sent to 3 different prisons. Clarence went to Leavenworth and John went to Lewisburg. They both tried escaping from those 2 prisons, which ultimately landed them in Alcatraz. And a year and a half later, they were free from Alcatraz. They had already planned to escape and were out in 1962.
And that's the crux of it, folks. Okay, so they get into the water. They've got these rubber fabricated boats that they've taken from rubber from the machinations inside of Alcatraz, and they've blown them up, and off they set into the San Francisco Bay. Now, it's no short distance, folks, between San Francisco proper and Alcatraz. It sits right in the middle. And there's reputed to be sharks, and of course, there's undercurrents, tides, all kinds of stuff going on.
I've swam it, so I can tell you there's no sharks that I've ever seen.
Okay, thank goodness for that. But you swam the whole distance?
I did. I did the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon in 2016.
I didn't know there was such a beast.
I did not know either. It's the irony of this whole race was I had taken my mom and her sister, the only two living siblings still alive today, out to Alcatraz in 2012 for the 50th anniversary. And while I was out there, I'm an avid runner. I'm also an athlete, and I had gone for a run that early morning. And gosh, I did not know. I went by Marina Green, and I'm seeing all this activity. I'm like, what's going on here? And when I saw the sign, it was an Escape from Alcatraz triathlon. I was like, one day I'm going to come back and do that. And lo and behold, after the History Channel documentary, the race people directly reached out to me and asked me, would I be interested in coming and being the first relative to ever swim? And I was like, absolutely. So,
and how was it swimming?
As far as I know, I'm the only one that's ever done it from as far as a relative.
Now, I know swimming in a pack is different. Believe it or not, folks, years ago, I used to do triathlons, and swimming in a pack is much different than swimming by yourself. Right. Somewhat like cycling when you're swimming in a pack and cycling. Somebody breaks the wind, so to speak, in front of you. Mm-hmm. Is it much the same when you were swimming across that?
My adrenaline was running so high that day. I was so nervous. It was my very first triathlon I had ever done. And, when I jumped in the water, I could see other people, but I just swam it so hard and so fast. I put my head down. The next thing I knew, I was on the shore. So it was like, I'm not sure how fast. I think I did it in like 45 minutes, 47 minutes.
Wow.
Which is pretty good, for a mile and a half swim. But I mean, it was nice. The one thing I will say though, about my uncles and the 2,000 people who swim it, every year, is that the difference between them and us is motivation. I could have easily at any point in time stopped and raised my hand and said, hey, I want to get out, I'm done, whatever. And someone would have come pick me up. But the night that they left, there was nobody. It was either do or die.
Sink or swim, literally.
Sink or swim, exactly. Mm-hmm. But when you read the book that we wrote, and we, from all of the digging of the FBI files that we have done, family information that we have, you'll quickly kind of find out they didn't even really get into the water. I mean, they pretty much, took their raft and tied up behind the back of the prison boat that was leaving at 11 o'clock. And the prison boat towed them out halfway in between the mainland and Alcatraz. And they released the cord that they were using to tie behind the boat or the prison boat. And then another boat was out there waiting for them, picked them up and ferried them to Half Moon Bay Marina, which is just below San Francisco. And from there, they were flown into Mexico and then ultimately into Brazil.
Who was helping them through all this? Because obviously you can't do this when you're inside Alcatraz. There's got to be somebody on the outside.
Well, the biggest piece of evidence that I found came, and like I said, from the FBI files. I was given access to the FBI files back in 2012 from a U.S. Marshal who was, this story. I mean, oh my gosh, I could sit here for hours and tell you the story, but I'm trying not to kind of go too deep into the weeds. and kind of cover the surface enough where someone who hasn't read the book will go, okay, I need to go read the book to really understand it. Because we take them through a chronological events all the way from John and Clarence's early upbringings, which is very important.
Yes, I agree.
And who they eventually meet as young, I'd say in their later teens, early 20s. And this individual is listed in the FBI files, which is Mickey Cohen. Mickey Cohen, they actually worked for Mickey Cohen along with another friend of theirs, which was called Fred Breezy. Fred Breezy was a pilot of theirs, or a good friend and also a pilot. And they were, believe it or not, growing weed for Mickey Cohen. And their ultimate plan was they were going to go into Mexico. Mickey Cohen had a farm down in Mexico, and they were going to ultimately grow it down there for him and be shipped back into the United States. But as fate have it, Mickey Cohen got in trouble with tax evasion, and the Kennedy brothers, John F. Kennedy and his
Robert.
brother Robert, eventually put Mickey Cohen in Alcatraz for tax evasion. And during that, and it's like I said, this is listed in the FBI files. During that time, he's the only Alcatraz prisoner to be bonded out of Alcatraz. He shows up in 1961. He's there for a couple of months. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Earl Warren, is the one who signs his bond.
Is that right?
He got no joke. He bonds out for 7 months. He's gone. While he was getting ready to leave, I became very good friends with, you probably have heard of James Whitey Bulger.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah.
Whitey Bulger told me that he went
another
to
guy with
another
Hollywood
guy,
film, Johnny Depp.
Went to Mickey Cohen and said, listen, when you get out, you flee to Brazil, marry a local woman, have children, and they can never bring you back. But he's gone for 7 months. He comes back to Alcatraz. Let's see, I believe it's in April of 1962, the last part of April of 1962. And the escape occurs just a few weeks after that. He sets up, and it's even recorded in the FBI files, he set up a boat that met them in the middle of the water and picked them up, ferried them to a marina, which is right outside the Golden Gate. If you went under the Golden Gate Bridge and you made a left, the very first marina you come to is Half Moon Bay. There is a little runway today that's still not manned by a tower. And Fred Breezy had his plane sitting right there, and they got on that plane and he flew them all the way into Mexico, where that farm was that they were originally supposed to go to begin with. Then after their death of their brother, after they contacted him in fear that he might have told them where they were, because he didn't know where they were at, they fled down into Brazil and ultimately, went to where Mickey Cohen was supposed to have gone. But like I said, I could go into so much more detail, but the book takes you through a chronological piece that is just unbelievable. And not only do we tell you the story, but we give you proof that they made it in the book.
The book is called Alcatraz, The Last Escape, and it's a true story of your involvement with it. Now, your family was receiving Christmas cards, letters from them all this time, and the authorities just refused to believe that they escaped. Were they trying to keep this aura of the inescapable prison alive for some reason, or were they just trying to cover up their own ineptness?
So I'm not a conspiracy theory nut. I'm really not. But as we wrote this book and we went through the evidence that we found, in this book, you're going to find a story embedded in the Alcatraz story. A totally amazing story. I have always believed that the authorities have always known where they were at. And it was to their it was to their benefit, the authorities' benefits, to leave them where they were at, because finding them could change another story in history that occurred around their escape time. And like I said, read the book. You'll understand what I'm saying when you read it. But I will say this. In the book, we show you a photograph of them in Brazil in somewhere in between 1970 and 1975. And it has been analyzed not only by the U.S. Marshals, the FBI, 5 independent facial recognition experts, including the last one that was done with Josh Gates, the leading AI company that does this today. And they came back with a 99.7% match. That is John Anglin in that photograph.
That's incredible.
So, when you just start right there, we can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they were alive in 1970. They did not drown in that bay. And there is, like I said, there's more to this story than what we have time for me to really share with you.
Escape from Alcatraz, folks. I urge you all to get it. Do you think that they were left in place because they were feeding back information to the authorities?
No.
Okay.
I will throw this out. So you remember I told you about Mickey Cohen. So
Sure.
Mickey Cohen not only was the only person to ever bond out of Alcatraz, he was also one of the only people to go straight to Alcatraz after being convicted. So the way that you normally went to Alcatraz, you were assigned to another prison, unless you're a really, really high profile person. I think Al Capone might have gone to another prison and then eventually there, but most prisoners, they were sent to other prisons. And then you wound up at Alcatraz because you were a person that they couldn't keep, kept escaping, or was a troublemaker. And the way that you got to Alcatraz, the warden of the prison would go before a board and say, I recommend this particular prisoner to be housed at Alcatraz because we can't do anything with him. And that's how you got there. But that's not true with Mickey Cohen. The Kennedy brothers hated him so much that they sent him directly to Alcatraz. When he gets to Alcatraz, like I said, his lawyer doesn't go before a regular federal judge. Think about today. If you were in prison and you wanted to appeal your conviction, if you could get before a federal judge, you would go before a regular federal judge. That's not what happened with him. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Have you ever heard of a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court getting involved in a prisoner and signing his bond to get out? But now, wait a minute. This isn't any Chief Justice. His name is Earl Warren. Do you know what Earl Warren did later in life?
I heard about it. The Warren Commission.
The Warren Commission.
Report.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mickey Cohen leaves, and who knows what he is doing other than working with one of my uncles and setting up the pieces that were going to be a part of the escape, which was the boat, the airplane. But then after the escape, Mickey Cohen had a really wonderful girlfriend that he loved and wanted to marry. She wouldn't marry him. She was a stripper. Her name was Candy Barr.
Oh, sure.
He actually hid her out at this farm that the brothers went to whenever she was on the run. But
was
not
that
only
the same
was
Candy Barr that performed in Dallas?
Yes,
and
guess who she was good friends with?
Yeah, Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby. Now, Jack Ruby was also good friends of Mickey Cohen.
Yeah, I didn't know that part of it.
So Candy Barr testified. Okay, she originally, afterwards, she recounted, but she testified that
Jack Ruby,
came to her house, had just came back from Mexico, and there was an individual in the car with him. He was dropping off a puppy for her. I mean, this is in documentary of her. And she went out to get the puppy, and she offered the guy who was in the car with Jack Ruby a glass of water. Would you like a glass of water? He said no. She did. She just said she'd never seen him before. And they both had just come from Mexico. And so a couple of days later, JFK is killed. She recognizes that guy as being the guy who was in the car with Jack Ruby. That was Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
So now all of a sudden, Oswald gets caught. Jack Ruby kills him.
Yes.
And says there's way more to this story than you really will ever find out. Because of Candy Barr recounting her story to that, she gets pardoned by John Connally, who is sitting in the front seat with JFK when he gets killed. My speculation is this, and this is, I have nothing that I could really try to prove this with, no evidence, hard evidence, is that Jack Ruby had taken Oswald down to that farm. And after he had killed, or after the assassination, he was going to ferry him down there to that farm. And Jack Ruby gets caught. And so now you have to eliminate that. Well, if John and Clarence Anglin and Frank Morris if we ever find them and they have a picture or can testify that Jack Ruby was there with Oswald at that farm, what do you think that's going to do to the story of JFK?
Oh, it's going to blow it open and give validation to the fact that it was indeed a conspiracy. There's no question.
Exactly right. So now, if you were the authorities, how much would you want to keep John and Clarence and Frank Morris out of the country?
Oh,
I'm not saying that I'm a total conspiracy nut, but when you start looking at all of the evidence and the facts that are in there, you can't help but come to that conclusion.
Wow.
I mean, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but every single thing that I've told you right now is actual fact and can be backed up by just simply reading a newspaper or going out and Googling it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, we know from history the Kennedys were hell-bent going after the mob.
Yes.
They had sent Carlos Marcello packing down to the Central America in his suit, walking through the jungle. And he actually confessed to the being involved in the assassination of Kennedy in 1982.
I believe it was a bunch of people that was involved in it.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too, without question. And
I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was the only person, but I believe him getting caught was a piece of the puzzle that they did not want to be revealed. Because I really believe he would have got in the courtroom and probably would have spilled his guts.
I think so too.
And he would have said a lot more. And, Jack Ruby was dying. He already knew he was dying of cancer. And, he took him out. He did not want it to be taken anymore. And that's to me, I believe that's what happened. But like I said, as we wrote the story, we uncovered this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that there is a story of JFK that is really kind of linked to the escape from Alcatraz. But it really is.
That's incredible. Yeah, because we know there was a huge mob involvement there. Moving forward, do you think your uncles are still alive, or do you think, as we had mentioned that letter that came into the FBI in 2018, says one of them had passed away, but the other one was suffering from cancer? Do you think they're still alive? And if so, would you like to go down and try and maybe exhume their bodies and bring them back home?
Well, first of all, we know that the letter is a fake.
It is.
The letter is not true. There was a time that I believe that both of them were dead, and very possibly John could be dead. I know Clarence is probably dead only because he was a very heavy smoker. None of the Anglin brothers lived to be, I want to say the oldest living brother was in his early 80s. Now, my grandfather lived to be 92. But I will say this about Brazil. I did go down to Brazil in 2022 with Josh Gates. And one of the things I was so impressed with was the way that those people eat and live. when we were doing a shoot up on top of a mountain that was like a mile up, there was an elderly man that was riding a horse and had a donkey that carried a lot of the equipment up. And this man was 95 years old. So after that, I started saying, it's possible that one of them might still be alive. Now, we do have people working. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with a U.S. Marshal either tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. He's coming to my house. We're using, well, he's a former U.S. Marshal, but we're using him along with some people in Interpol of tracking down. And we believe we've actually found some relatives down there. So we're very close, hopefully, to maybe putting a final nail in this coffin, so to speak. Once we find the relatives, then we'll find out where they're buried at. If they are both dead, we'll be able to take DNA from the children and possibly from them, and we will put it to bed. But now I do know the location of this farm. I do know where it was at. I've been to that farm. Well, I've been to that area. I haven't been to the farm itself, but I have been to the area. I have been to the little town that they originally first got their first house in. I mean, I have a photo of the house that they originally lived in 1970, and
Wow.
I've actually been there. So yeah, we will find them, and I do want to meet my cousins.
Of course.
And if one of them are still alive, like I said, I have two. My mom and her sister are still alive, and I would love for them to see their brother before either one of them pass away. So
I agree with you.
that is a goal that I am after.
I think that's a good place to leave it. I would like to invite you back anytime you want to for any updates.
Maybe we'll do a show from down in Brazil.
That would be great. Absolutely. Just to let you know, I'm a big JFK guy. I've written a book on the assassination, and once you mention Candy Bar, like, holy cow. I've got a few documentaries out about it as well. Ted Sorensen was my friend, JFK speechwriter. By the way, folks, he confirms conspiracy, and he names the mob.
Yes, the mob was definitely involved in it.
Yep. So there you go. The book is called Alcatraz, The Last Escape. You got to get this. I mean, come on. It's a no-brainer.
You really will
folks.
love the book.
This is perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
I'm Brent Holland from The Brent Holland Show. Take care of each other out there. It's nasty, and people are hurting, folks. So just be kind. Open a door for someone. Just a little thing like that makes a huge difference in a person's life. Smile at them and say hello. You take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.